12 years ago, I made a decision that would change the course of my life forever. At the time, I was living in the United States. I had a steady job, independence, and a future I was slowly building for myself. Then one day, my father called me. His voice sounded tired, weaker than I remembered. He told me he could no longer take care of himself due to his age, and he asked me to come back home. I hesitated. Leaving my job, my stability, and the life I had built was not an easy decision. But my father promised me something that stayed in my mind. He told me that if I returned and took care of him during his final years, he would leave me the family home and all his properties. It was a tempting promise. But more than that, he was my father. And I loved him. So I went back. From that moment on, my life revolved entirely around him. For 12 long years, I became his caregiver. My days were filled with doctor appointments, medications, preparing meals, helping him move, and sitting beside him while he told me stories about his youth. Meanwhile, my own life was slowly put on hold. I sacrificed relationships. I turned down job opportunities. I abandoned personal dreams. Everything became secondary to caring for my father. It was exhausting, emotionally and physically, but I never regretted it. What hurt the most was seeing how absent my siblings were. I have 4 brothers. They rarely visited. The worst was my youngest brother, Carlos. He had always had a difficult relationship with my father and barely showed up once a year. While I was there every single day, Carlos lived his life as if our father didn't exist. As the years passed, my father's health declined further. And then, something strange began to happen. A few weeks before his death, I tried to talk to him about his will. He had always been very direct with me, but suddenly he avoided the topic. Whenever I asked if everything was ready, he would change the subject or tell me not to worry. That I would get what I deserved. I trusted him. When he passed away, the pain was overwhelming. We organized the funeral, and suddenly all my brothers appeared, acting as if they had been there all along. I stayed quiet. I didn't argue. I believed my father had kept his promise. That belief didn't last long. A few weeks later, I went to verify the will. That's when I was told there wasn't one. Confused and shocked, I started digging deeper. That's when Carlos showed up with the property deeds. Every single property had been transferred to his name while my father was still alive. No one knew. No one had been told. I felt betrayed in a way I can't fully describe. I had given 12 years of my life to caring for my father, while the brother who barely showed up inherited everything. When I confronted Carlos, his response was cold and emotionless. He said our father believed he deserved it. And that it wasn't his problem if I had expected something else. My other 3 brothers were furious. Even though they hadn't cared for our father the way I had, they couldn't understand why Carlos was the only one who benefited. Together, we went to a lawyer, hoping there was a way to fight it. There wasn't. Everything had been done legally. For months, I lived in constant anger and frustration. I felt like I had thrown away over a decade of my life for an empty promise. The family completely fell apart. We barely spoke to Carlos anymore. Eventually, I moved out of the family home because staying there felt unbearable. Then, a few months ago, while packing my things, I found something unexpected. An old box filled with papers my father had kept. Inside were letters, receipts, and finally, an old will. In it, my father left me the family house and divided the remaining properties equally among all 5 siblings. I rushed to a lawyer. Legally, the document had no power. Since my father had already transferred the properties during his lifetime, the old will wasn't valid. But the lawyer told me something important: we could use it to question my father's true intentions in court. I spoke with my brothers. We decided to unite and fight. When Carlos found out, he threatened to countersue us. The legal battle became intense. My savings started disappearing quickly, but I couldn't let it go. I had already lost too much. I needed justice. Update. 8 months later, we finally received a ruling. After presenting evidence and witnesses, the court ruled partially in our favor. Carlos kept some of the properties, but the family home and one of the lands were returned to me. It wasn't a complete victory. And it didn't fix everything. My relationship with Carlos is completely broken. He blames us for taking what he believes was his. My other brothers and I are trying to rebuild our bond, but the damage runs deep. Looking back, I don't know if I would sacrifice so much again for a promise. What I do know is this. Family can teach you some of the hardest lessons in life. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like and subscribe.